The Texas evening had finally cooled, sinking into that soft orange glow that makes the world feel calm, until my phone buzzed and shattered it. I had just lifted a glass of iced tea to my lips when the notification appeared. Estate account closed. At first, I almost laughed. It felt like one of those cheap scam texts that try to scare you into clicking a link. My thumb hovered above the delete button, but something inside me whispered not to ignore it. I opened my banking app. My heart dropped so hard it felt like it punched through my ribs. The account, the one tied to my grandparents' estate, was gone. Closed. Cleared out. That account wasn't about money. It was the house, the cedar-sided home in Dallas where I spent Christmas mornings in fuzzy socks, where Grandpa read the newspaper on the porch swing, where Grandma taught me how to knead dough while humming soft hymns. That house was a living, breathing memory. It was supposed to be my future. I still remembered Grandpa's voice. "Emily, you've cared for us more than anyone. One day this home will be yours." Grandma's gentle nod. Her warm hand squeezing mine. And now, with one line of text, that promise felt erased. I called the bank instantly. "Ma'am," the representative said, her voice painfully calm, "the account was closed this morning. An ownership transfer was filed by a family member." A family member. My pulse hammered. I didn't need her to say the name. Aunt Carol. Carol had always been different, sharp in every way. Sharp heels clicking across the kitchen tile, sharp tongue, sharp smile that never softened her eyes. She prided herself on being the successful one, the one with the good job, the polished resume, the condo in Houston. But when Grandpa's health declined? When Grandma needed help getting to dialysis? It wasn't Carol sitting beside their hospital beds. It wasn't Carol rushing over with groceries or medicines. It was me. I remembered one Thanksgiving years ago, warm pies cooling by the window, Cowboys game murmuring from the living room. Grandma had leaned close and whispered that the house would be mine someday. Back then, I thought it was sentimental holiday talk. Now I knew it wasn't. That night, unable to sleep, I drove to the Cedar house. But when I pulled up, my stomach collapsed. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. And in the yard, leaning slightly forward as if mocking me. Sold. Anger and heartbreak collided inside my chest. In that silent Texas night, cicadas singing around me, I made a vow. I won't scream. I won't beg. I won't warn her. I will fight, quietly, and she will never see it coming. But the next family gathering would reveal something even darker, something that proved Carol wasn't just stealing a house, she was rewriting history. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments your name and where you're listening from, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this one. The following Saturday, I found myself sitting in an Applebee's booth in Arlington, staring at a basket of untouched mozzarella sticks while the rest of my family chattered around me. It was supposed to be a casual gathering, Carol had insisted on it. She even sent a group text dripping with that familiar bossy tone. Family dinner. 7 p.m. Don't be late. A part of me didn't want to show up. A bigger part needed answers. Applebee's smelled like fried food and cheap perfume that evening. My nerves were so tight I could feel my pulse in my fingers. My parents sat across from me, pretending to read the menu. They avoided my eyes, and I wondered how much they actually knew. Carol arrived late, of course. She swept in wearing a navy blue pantsuit like she was walking into a courtroom instead of a casual chain restaurant. Diamond studs sparkled in her ears, and her confident smirk slid across the room before she even reached the table. "Well," she announced, sliding into her seat, "I guess you've all heard the news. The house is finally off my hands. Closed the deal this week." My stomach twisted. She said it as if she had sold an old dresser, not the home that held our family's memories for generations. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father stared at the condiments. My cousins whispered. Then Carol turned to me, sharp smile, sharper tone. "Honestly, Emily, it's for the best. You're far too young to handle a property like that. Houses are meant to be sold, not clung to like childhood toys. A couple of cousins chuckled. Someone muttered, she's right. My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to stand up and tell them everything, the forged paperwork, the stolen inheritance, the lies. But I didn't. Instead, I lifted my water glass and said softly, if that's how you see it. And the smirk that spread across her face told me everything. She believed she had humiliated me into silence. But silence wasn't defeat. Silence was strategy. When I got home that night, something inside me snapped into clarity. I pulled out every box, folder, and paper I had ever kept from my grandparents. My dining table disappeared under piles of documents, medical bills, insurance statements, letters, receipts, tangible proof of the sacrifices I had made when Carol was nowhere to be found. Then I uncovered something buried beneath old Christmas cards, a letter in my grandfather's handwriting. Faded ink, shaky strokes, but unmistakably his words. Emily, when we're gone, the house is yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I pressed the letter to my chest. This wasn't nostalgia. This was evidence. And suddenly, I knew Carol's biggest mistake. She underestimated the quiet one. But what I discovered next, hidden in conversations, memories, and the whispers of old neighbors, proved that Carol's betrayal went far deeper than a stolen house, and it was only the beginning. In the days that followed, my dining table looked like a detective's command center. Papers stacked like miniature towers. Sticky notes with dates. Old envelopes torn open and laid flat like fossils. I wasn't just sorting documents, I was piecing together a truth that Carol never expected anyone to uncover. The medical receipts came first. Dozens of them. Bills from Parkland Memorial Hospital, prescription summaries, dialysis payments, every one of them paid directly from my account. Thousands of dollars I had spent without a second thought just to keep my grandparents comfortable during their final years. Carol had never even offered gas money. As I layered the receipts into neat folders, a realization hit me. This wasn't just a moral case. This was a legal one. If Carol wanted to pretend she was the dutiful daughter, the paperwork would prove otherwise. Still, I knew documents alone wouldn't be enough. Carol was talented at twisting stories, always making herself look like the hero and everyone else the afterthought. So I needed something she couldn't rewrite. Witnesses. I started with Mr. Johnson, the neighbor who had lived next door to my grandparents for 30 years. We met at a Starbucks near my school, the hiss of the espresso machine filling the small silences between us. When I explained what happened, he leaned back, eyes soft with memory. I remember your granddad saying it clear as day, he said. We're leaving the house to Emily. She's the only one who's been here for us. I scribbled every word into my notebook. Next, I called Mrs. Alvarez, the church friend who sometimes drove Grandma to Sunday service. Over the phone, she sighed. Oh yes, Mija. They told me many times the house was meant for you. Your aunt, well, she wasn't around much. Piece by piece, the puzzle stopped looking like chaos and started looking like a strategy. I wasn't alone. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being emotional or irrational or too attached, as Carol always mocked. I was right. With witnesses secured, I reached out to a local attorney, Mr. Carter, a calm, level-headed man who agreed to give me a free consultation. Sitting in his office surrounded by leather-bound law books, I spread out my evidence across his desk. He skimmed every page with the focus of a surgeon. Finally, he leaned back and said, "You have a solid foundation. Forgery. Undue influence. Misrepresentation. This isn't going to be easy, but Emily, you have more than enough to start a case." A strange mix of relief and adrenaline surged through me. For weeks, Carol had painted me as weak. But she had no idea I was preparing to push back. That night at Sunday dinner, I acted quiet, small, just the way she preferred me. She bragged about her smart financial decisions while I passed the mashed potatoes. She made pointed jokes about people who cling to houses they can't afford, and my family laughed politely. But inside? Inside, I was steel. I had the truth. I had the evidence. And a storm was gathering. But the moment Carol realized I wasn't backing down, her reaction would ignite a family war no one was prepared for, especially me. The official summons arrived 2 weeks later, folded neatly inside a cream-colored envelope stamped with the Dallas County Courthouse seal. When I opened it, the room seemed to tilt. Carol wasn't just whispering anymore. She wasn't just smirking at family dinners. She had filed legal paperwork against me. The motion claimed that I was fabricating my grandparents' wishes, that I was delusional from grief, that the house had always been Carol's rightful inheritance. And the cruelest line of all. Miss Johnson is emotionally unstable and acting out of fantasy-driven entitlement. My hands shook as I reread those words. It wasn't just about property now. She was trying to destroy my reputation, my credibility, everything I had spent years building. The tension snapped into something bigger at our annual family barbecue in Houston. Normally the smell of grilled chicken and the sound of cousins screaming on the lawn brought nostalgia. But that year? The air felt thick with unspoken loyalties and silent judgment. I had barely set the potato salad on the table when Carol started toward me. Oversized sunglasses. Expensive perfume. A lawyer's letter tucked into her handbag like a trophy. Honestly, Emily, she said loudly enough for half the backyard to hear. You should be ashamed. Dragging us into court over lies? Grandpa would be sick. My jaw clenched. Don't you dare speak for him, I snapped. Her smile sharpened. Oh, sweetie. You're just jealous. Mom loved me more. You were always the helper, never the favorite. And now you're clinging to that house like it will fix your insecurities. The words hit like cold steel. A few relatives gasped. Others looked away, pretending the grill needed their full attention. But the worst part? My parents stood silent, staring at the burgers as if they were afraid to burn them. Their silence cut deeper than anything Carol said. By the end of the barbecue, the family tree had splintered into factions. Cousin Laura hugged me tightly and whispered, "Don't give up." I remember what Grandpa said. But Uncle Rick shook his head as I passed by. This whole mess is tearing us apart. Let it go, Emily. Let it go? The words echoed bitterly. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried until my body hurt. The smell of barbecue smoke still clung to my clothes, reminding me of how far things had fallen apart. But beneath the grief, a seed of determination grew. If Carol wanted war, she had just fired the first bullet. And I wasn't retreating. Within days, she escalated again. Rumors spread through family group texts, claims that I was unstable, irresponsible, money-hungry. Invitations stopped coming. Messages sat unread or ignored. Even on social media, she posted cryptic lines like, "Some people will lie about anything for attention." Every whisper was a knife. Every silence was a wound. Yet instead of breaking me, it hardened something inside. And Carol felt that shift, because that's when she hired a high-powered Houston attorney known for shredding opponents through sheer paperwork alone. The attacks were no longer social. They were strategic. They were personal. And they were only getting worse. But just when Carol thought she had buried me under intimidation and lies, one late-night phone call would expose her true intentions, and ignite a fire inside me that she never expected. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a storm with no umbrella, just taking hit after hit, hoping not to drown. Every day, another envelope arrived at my door. Another demand. Another legal notice. Another attempt to bury me under paperwork. Carol's new attorney, a slick-haired Houston powerhouse, wasted no time unleashing a barrage of intimidation tactics. Page after page of legal jargon filled my mailbox. Documents demanding old bank records, messages insisting on depositions, requests for proof, anything to wear me down. But instead of crushing me, each document strengthened my resolve. At school, I pretended everything was fine. My students didn't deserve to see the exhaustion in my eyes or the fear in my chest. I still smiled. I still taught. But behind every cheerful lesson, a battle raged in my mind. One afternoon, as I packed up my classroom, the janitor, Mr. Harris, poked his head in. He had known my grandparents from church. "Heard about what's going on between you and Carol," he said gently. "Don't let her break you, Emily. Everyone knew your grandparents loved you. That house was meant for you." His words cracked something inside me, not in a painful way, but like light breaking through a dark room. And then came the night everything changed. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, surrounded by folders, when my phone rang. Carol's number flashed on the screen. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But something told me to answer. I barely said hello before she launched into her attack, her voice syrupy sweet, but sharp beneath the surface. "You really think you can win, don't you?" she purred. "Here's the thing, Emily. Even if you do somehow get that house back, what then? You'll still be the pathetic little schoolteacher with nothing. And me? I'll always be smarter than you. I'll always be better." Her words didn't stab, they scorched. I felt my hands tremble, but my spirit didn't. Without another word, I hung up. And that's when something inside me shifted. All the sleepless nights, the ignored messages from family, the slander, the lies, it all crystallized with perfect clarity. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for every sacrifice I made, every promise my grandparents whispered in their soft Texas voices, every quiet moment where I chose kindness over confrontation. I was fighting for myself. From that moment on, the fear that had curled in my stomach for weeks transformed into something powerful. Determination. Pure, unwavering, unshakable determination. If Carol wanted a war, she would get one. But it wouldn't be the kind she expected. Because her loudness came from insecurity. And my silence? My silence was becoming my greatest weapon. And as the court date finally drew near, I uncovered a financial trail, one Carol hoped would stay buried, that would turn the entire case upside down. The morning of the trial arrived with a sky so gray it looked like the world was holding its breath. I stood on the courthouse steps gripping my binder of evidence so tightly my knuckles ached. Every memory, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, I carried all of it in that binder. Inside, the courtroom smelled of old wood, paper, and floor polish. The benches creaked as relatives and neighbors filled the rows. Some sat with folded arms. Others whispered behind their hands, hungry for drama they would later pretend to despise. Then, the sound that made my stomach twist. The sharp click of Carol's heels. She entered wearing a tailored black suit, chin high, eyes full of practiced superiority. Her attorney followed close behind, radiating the cold confidence of someone who rarely heard the word losing. She flashed me a smile, thin, smug, poisonous. The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, called the session to order. Carol's attorney went first. He stood like he was delivering a TED Talk, voice smooth and polished. "This case is straightforward," he began. "My client, Carol Whitmore, is the legal heir. Miss Johnson is acting out of grief, clinging to imaginary promises. There is no will. No written proof. Only emotional storytelling." He said it like I was invisible. Like I was a nuisance. Then Mr. Carter, my lawyer, rose. He didn't posture. He didn't raise his voice. "This case is not about emotion," he said. "It is about truth and manipulation." He placed stacks of receipts on the evidence table, every hospital bill I had paid. "Miss Johnson wasn't just a granddaughter," he continued. "She was the caregiver. The provider. The constant presence." Next came the letter. My grandfather's handwriting, faded but powerful, filled the courtroom with a silence that felt almost holy. "Emily, the house is yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Gasps rippled through the benches. I saw Cousin Laura cover her mouth, eyes wide. My parents shifted uncomfortably, shame flickering across their faces. Witnesses followed. Mr. Johnson, voice shaky but certain. Mrs. Alvarez, firm and unwavering. Each testimony was a brick in the wall that protected the truth. Then Carol took the stand. She painted herself as a victim, voice trembling, eyes strategically moist. I loved my parents, she insisted. Emily is rewriting things. I never stole anything. The house was mine legally. Her attorney jumped in. There is no will naming Emily. Without a will, the law is clear. And for a moment, I felt a chill. They were right. There was no official will. But then, Mr. Carter slid new documents across the table. Bank statements. Large transfers. Money moved from the estate account into Carol's personal account right after the funeral. And the purchase? A brand new BMW. The gallery erupted in whispers. The judge's eyes narrowed, sharp and unforgiving. Carol's face crumpled. The cracks in her confidence finally showed. And then it was my turn. I stood, palms sweating, but voice steady. That house wasn't about money, I said. It was home. It was legacy. It was everything my grandparents promised me. I'm not here to take, I'm here to honor them. For the first time, Carol couldn't look at me. The judge banged her gavel. The room fell silent. Judgment was coming. And when the judge finally delivered her decision, Carol's world shattered, and the victory I thought I wanted didn't feel anything like I imagined. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp, final, echoing through the courtroom like a cracked bell. Everyone held their breath. Even the air felt tight. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of a hammer. Based on the evidence presented, the financial records, credible witness testimony, and handwritten correspondence from the deceased, this court finds that the property rightfully belongs to Emily Johnson. A wave of whispers rippled through the benches. But the judge wasn't finished. We also find that Carol Whitmore acted in bad faith and engaged in fraudulent behavior. Restitution will be ordered immediately. It felt surreal, like hearing someone narrate my life from far away. Carol sat frozen. Her face drained of color. Her perfect composure shattered like thin glass. For the first time, she didn't have a witty remark. No smirk. No sharp retort. No superiority. Just silence. And in that silence, there was something like disbelief. Maybe even fear. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I didn't seek revenge in her expression. I simply breathed. A breath that felt like the first full inhale in months. As the courtroom emptied, some relatives avoided my gaze entirely. Others looked at me with quiet respect. Cousin Laura squeezed my arm and whispered, "You did what needed to be done. Don't regret it." But the faces I searched for, my parents, didn't carry victory. My father offered a stiff nod. My mother kept her eyes lowered, as if the floor was more important than her daughter's justice. Their disappointment stung more than Carol's betrayal ever had. Winning, I realized, wasn't the triumphant celebration I imagined. It came with scars, fractures, and a loneliness that crawled under the skin. 2 weeks later, I stood once again before the cedar-sided house, only this time, with a key in my hand instead of grief in my throat. The door creaked open. Dust shimmered in the sunlight. The faint smell of cedar and cinnamon, my grandparents' scent, still lingered like a memory refusing to fade. I walked room to room in silence. The empty dining table. The quiet living room where we once laughed over board games. The staircase where I used to race my cousins. Everything was familiar. Everything was foreign. The house was mine. Legally. Completely. But winning it had come at the cost of something I never expected. Family. That Thanksgiving, I set the table with Grandma's good china and cooked the recipes she taught me. The turkey. The mashed potatoes. The cinnamon pies. but only one place was set. Mine. The silence felt heavy but honest. I lit a candle on the mantel, my quiet tribute, and whispered. I kept my promise. And for a moment, the house seemed to breathe with me, as if my grandparents were there in the stillness, proud, not of the victory, but of the strength it took to fight for it. I didn't celebrate. I simply existed in the quiet. Because sometimes quiet is not emptiness. Quiet is truth. And silence. Silence is power. But what came in the years after, what the house became, how life rebuilt itself, and how silence turned into strength, would reveal that this battle was never just about inheritance, it was about transformation. 2 years passed. Seasons shifted. Holidays came and went. And slowly, almost quietly, the cedar-sided house in Dallas stopped feeling like a battlefield and started becoming a home again. Not my grandparents' home. Not the house Carol tried to steal. But my home. I repainted the shutters a deep forest green, just the way Grandma once mentioned in passing. I planted roses along the porch where Grandpa used to sit with his morning paper. I replaced the creaking boards on the swing where I studied for finals and where my grandparents used to tell me stories about their childhoods in small Texas towns. Little by little, the house transformed. And in the process, I did too. Neighbors began dropping by again, not out of curiosity or gossip, but with genuine warmth. Mr. Johnson would stop for coffee on Saturday mornings, telling stories about my grandparents that I had never heard. Mrs. Alvarez would bring her famous banana bread and hug me a little longer than necessary, as if trying to fill the gaps left by the family who drifted away. And drift they did. Most of the relatives who once laughed at Carol's jabs no longer visited. Invitations stopped coming. The family group chat grew quieter, eventually fading into silence. Some stayed neutral. Some chose sides. Some simply disappeared. Carol never contacted me again. Rumor had it she sold her condo to cover the restitution she owed. She moved somewhere smaller, quieter, maybe out of shame, maybe out of anger, maybe both. But her absence wasn't something I celebrated. It was simply another truth I had learned. Blood creates relatives. Loyalty creates family. The house taught me that. On the second anniversary of the verdict, I hosted a small gathering, not for family, but for the people who had stood with me when it mattered. Friends. Neighbors. Coworkers. People who believed me when my own blood didn't. We crowded around the wooden dining table, once the heart of old Thanksgiving dinners, and laughter filled the room again. Not the forced, polite laughter of holiday obligations. Real laughter, rich and alive. For the first time since my grandparents passed, the house felt warm again. Later that night, after the last guest left, I walked through the quiet halls. The home no longer felt like a monument to pain. It felt like a vessel of every lesson I never expected to learn. I stood in the living room, lit a single candle, and whispered into the soft stillness. I kept it safe. It wasn't a victory cry. It wasn't a declaration of revenge. It was closure. A promise honored. A legacy protected. And a chapter finally settling into peace. The house creaked softly in the quiet night, almost like it was responding, approving, remembering. And as the flame flickered, I realized something profound. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is strength. Silence is truth. And sometimes, silence is the loudest revenge.